Madam President, as you know very well, we've been asking for immediate passage of the Miners Protection Act, not just for our state of West Virginia, but for all the miners across America, basically the retired miners who have done everything that's been asked of them. And we have some of our colleagues here today, and I'm going to go at this time, if I can, and my other colleagues would allow me, I would defer right now to Senator Brown from Ohio, since he has other commitments. He'll be coming back and forth. If he could go ahead.
Thank you.
Get started at this time and then out and come back, and then we'll go right to our other senator from Ohio and be able to continue with this very
Thank you,
important.
Mr. President. I know everyone is squeezed too for time, but I thank Senator Manchin for his leadership, the presiding officer, the other senator from West Virginia, Senator Capito, Senator Portman, my friend from Cincinnati too, and we know how serious this is, and we're all willing in this body to do, at least the four of us, as Senator Casey and Senator Warner, I know too, whatever it takes to get this fixed. We know we can do this. Our nation's retired coal miners are on the brink of losing their health care, their retirement savings. This Congress can pull them back from that. The UMW health care and pension plan covers 100,000 workers, 6,800 people in Senator Portman's in my state. The plans were almost completely funded before the financial collapse of almost a decade ago, but the industry and its pension funds were devastated by the recession. We know if Congress fails to act, thousands of retired miners could lose their health care this year, and the entire plan would fall as early as 2017. For every one of those years, they earned, and for every one of those years where mine workers worked for decades and decades in the mine, they earned and contributed to their retiree health care plans and their pension plans, benefits they fought for. This is similar to when Senator Manchin and I, prior to, remember what it was like here during the auto rescue, that these were benefits they fought for, benefits they gave up raises for, benefits they've earned, putting money aside, and now they've been betrayed, frankly, and that's what's so important. I will enter the rest of my remarks in the record because I know that others want to speak, but we just had a meeting of a group of senators, and Senator Reid played a film of what's happening in West Virginia, the flooding, and much of that flooding is in miners' country. Most of it is. There were mine workers' homes, Senator Capito knows this too, mine workers' homes that were underwater as other residents in these communities, proud communities that have done everything right. People worked hard and they played by the rules, they paid their taxes, they helped their community. They've lost so much, and this is the last thing they just simply should not lose. My contention in the Finance Committee, and I know it's my colleague from Ohio's contention too, that committee should not do anything until we fix the miners' pension. Senator McConnell, the Republican leader, seems to be the only one that doesn't want to move on this. All the rest of us do. But the point that a lot of us are making, we shouldn't allow this body, as important as I think Puerto Rico is, as much as we want to help this, we shouldn't be voting on restructuring Puerto Rico's debt without lifting a finger to help our retired miners. I don't want to delay Puerto Rico. I want Senator McConnell to commit to us that, okay, we'll move ahead in Puerto Rico, but promise us a vote, promise us a date for a vote so we can do what we need to do to move this money from the Abandoned Mine Fund to the UMWA Pension Fund in a way that works for these miners, that works for the widows of miners, that works for people who are sick from working in the mines, works for people who are injured working in the mines. As many of you know, I wear on my lapel a depiction of a canary in a bird cage. All of us know in mining country, the mine workers used to take that canary down in the mines. They had no union in the old days to help them. They had no government that cared enough to help them. It's up to us to provide that. The canary in the mine's been tweeting mercilessly, and it's time for us to step up and do what we were hired to do in these jobs. I thank Senator Manchin.
Thank you, Senator. And if I can just give a little background, and then I'll go right to Senator Portman if we're okay with that. Thank you, Senator Brown. I appreciate very much the presiding officer, Madam President. She understands very well. We're both from the same state, born and raised there. And tough times has always been part of our DNA. So that people know the history of the mines, the coal that's been produced, we would not be the country we are today. We would not be the superpower of the world if we didn't have the domestic energy in our backyard. Domestic energy was the coal that we had, that we've used to fuel the Industrial Revolution. We basically defended ourselves in every war. It was so important during World War II. If you were a coal miner, you would be asked to be deferred from fighting in the war to provide the energy the country needed to defend itself. That's how important this product has been. Today, it's kind of taboo to talk about. Oh, it's done all this harm. They don't understand we have the life we have because of it. There's a transition going on, and we understand that. But in 1946, President Harry Truman said that we can't have the miners go on strike. John L. Lewis is going to take the mines out on strike for unfair compensation and the safety. And Harry Truman promised them if they would stay, it was so important for our economy after World War II to keep moving forward. And without the energy, we couldn't do it. So he says, if you all will settle this strike, I'll make sure that everybody that produces coal, all the mine owners will pay into a pension fund that will guarantee that you will have health care benefits when you retire and a very meager pension. We're not talking a big money. We're talking very, very, very meager supplements. That was committed and paid for. And it had been funded all the way up until the greed of Wall Street in 2008 and fell apart. Now here we have the time. We go right up to the end of the time. Every time we go up to this timetable. Well, July 1st is the Puerto Rico. And then, let me tell you one thing, July 15th, all the retirees will start receiving notices that they'll start losing their health care benefits within 90 days. Now, if you've seen on television all the devastation to our state in West Virginia, all the flooding, all the misery, the loss of life, one of the largest loss of lives in any flooding in the United States history was just happened this past week in the state of West Virginia, our beautiful state. And every one of those communities that you're seeing on television with houses on fire floating down the river, with every businesses run and all the homes and all the people that are left with nothing, every one of those are mining communities. Every one of them have miners living in them. Every one of them have widows who probably lost their husband to black lung, depending on the health care benefits. But yet we've got so many other things, and we're just asking for a vote. This is a bipartisan bill. Here we're standing on the floor, all of us, not being Democrats or Republicans, just being Americans trying to do the right thing. And all we're asking for is a vote on this. It'll pass. And there are ways for us to pay for it so it does not cost the American taxpayers. That's what we're asking for, and I don't think that's too much to ask for. I've said, let's vote no on cloture tomorrow. I'm not voting or saying to be for or against Puerto Rico. You know, I understand the situation they're in. But unless we defend and fight for the people that have given us the country we have and just disregard that, then who are we? What's our purpose for being here? So with that, I would yield the floor to my good friend, my colleague from Ohio, Senator Portman.
I thank my friend and colleague from West Virginia. I appreciate his passion for this issue, and over the years, he has fought hard for our miners in every different respect, as has his colleague from West Virginia, who's in the chair right now, Senator Capito. They need us right now, and he's absolutely right. We've got a bill on the floor of the United States Senate that provides for essentially the bankruptcy of Puerto Rico. Right? So I'm not being critical of that legislation. I know Puerto Rico needs help, but I also know that the people I represent need help, and the people who these two senators represent, and Senator Brown, who spoke earlier. So all we're asking for is give us a chance. We have legislation that's been carefully crafted with United Mine Workers, with the coal companies, on a bipartisan basis. This is legislation that is fiscally responsible. My own view, for what it's worth, is that if we don't help now, it's very likely there could be later a need for significant funding from the taxpayer. Why? Because unfortunately we're in a situation now where, because of all these bankruptcies of these coal companies, and we can talk about, you know, the policy toward the coal companies and the policies toward coal in this country, but the reality is there are a lot of companies in places like Ohio and West Virginia and other states out west that are either in bankruptcy or heading toward bankruptcy. And the people who are getting left behind are these coal miners who worked hard, played by the rules, have their pension, have their health care lined up, but because of the bankruptcies, they now find themselves on the outside. Currently, by the way, these mine worker pensions are relatively modest. $530 per month is the average. They're headed toward bankruptcy, by the way, within 5 to 10 years. There are 90,000 coal miners. My colleague said closer to 100,000, over 90,000 coal miners affected here. In Ohio alone, it's over 6,000 coal miners. When that pension goes bankrupt in 5 to 10 years, there is no guarantee, as I see it, that the PBGC, that's the Pension Benefit Guarantee Corporation, that the PBGC is going to be there, because that agency is also in trouble. So these mine workers who have sacrificed so much for so long, working in the mines, again, working hard, playing by the rules, help power this nation, could be left with no pensions. That's simply not acceptable. There's a further issue that some folks aren't focused on yet, but will be soon in a lot of our states, and that's that there are about 20,000 of these retired coal miners who may well lose their retiree health coverage at the end of this year. So this is not down the road, this is now, this is this year. Again, these miners spent their careers in dangerous jobs. These jobs resulted in higher rates of injury, disease, cancer, and they're therefore especially dependent on these health benefits, and they've earned them. This would be devastating to those families to lose those benefits. So our solution, again, a bipartisan solution, Senator Capito's here, Senator Manchin, Senator Brown was here, others. Our solution is to have no interruption in these family health benefits, keep the pension plan solvent so it doesn't go under, so we don't have to have a bailout, and we can do it with a fund that is currently available. Senator Manchin talked for a moment about how this is something that can be handled under our current fiscal situation. As some of you know, I'm a fiscal hawk, and I wouldn't have signed up to this bill if I didn't see a way to pay for it. The money would come from a miners' health fund that is currently spending over about half of its annual allocation. The fund allows for $490 million in annual spending for retired miners. Currently, it's spending closer to $225 million. So that fund is available. Our point is, why not use the rest of that authority for that fund to be able to spend the money to save the miners' pensions and make sure none of them lose their health coverage? And again, I think this solution may well cost less money than simply allowing the plan to go bankrupt, which is the other alternative. Because then I think it's very likely you'd end up with a major bailout, and the taxpayers would be asked to pick up the rest. So who are these miners? In the last several years, I've been at some of the coal mines in Ohio. I've been at above-ground coal mines. I've been under the ground, 600 feet with coal miners. I've had the opportunity to visit 3 coal mines, one twice. Coal miners also come to a lot of my other meetings. They come and they speak up. They talk about why they believe that they deserve to be treated fairly. They have powered this nation. Ohio is 70% coal dependent right now for our electricity. Many states represented here are even higher. Some, virtually all the electricity comes from coal. It's a hard job. Again, when you're underground several hundred feet and you see the kind of work that they do, you learn to appreciate the fact that they are taking a risk every day. And they do have additional health problems because of it. And so these are people who not just power our country, but power their communities. They're engaged and involved in their communities. They want to be sure these smaller rural communities can stay vibrant, and losing that pension and losing that health care benefit obviously hurts those communities. These are people who have played by the rules, as I said earlier. They're patriotic, hardworking Americans who deserve our help right now because of this pending bankruptcy. And again, why on this bill? It's not about my opposition to the underlying bill, but it is about my insistence that we have a vote. And I intend not to vote to move forward with the Puerto Rico bill unless we get our vote. And it's appropriate. If we're going to help Puerto Rico escape bankruptcy, then we should also help the 900,000 or the 90,000 miners we talked about in West Virginia, in Ohio, in other states who are suffering the effects of these coal bankruptcies. They don't deserve to be left behind as the Senate addresses other bankruptcies. So again, I want to thank my colleagues who are here. The presiding officer kindly took the chair so that I could make these remarks. I'm going to go replace her now and have the opportunity to listen to this debate from the chair. And I want to thank my colleagues for their willingness to stand up at this crucial time to say this is our opportunity to be heard. It's all we're asking for. let's have a vote. I think if we did have a vote and all of my colleagues knew the facts around this issue, I think we'd be successful. And we'd be able to help allow these miners to get the benefits that they deserve. Yield back to my colleague.
Thank you. My friend and my colleague from Ohio, I want to thank him so much. He's absolutely correct. The accurate count is 90,594. Of those 90,000, 27,000 come from my state of West Virginia. 27,000. And when you talked about who are the miners, the most patriotic people you've ever met, most of them are veterans. They've given of themselves, they've sacrificed, and they will continue to do so. And this country still needs a balanced energy policy that works for all of us. And they're willing to do that, and they're willing to do the hard, tough, heavy lifting jobs that they've always done, and doesn't ask for a whole lot of accolades about doing that. I have another one of our colleagues here from the great state of Indiana who knows the mining industry very well. I've been with him, and we've been out talking to him and watching the product move and watching how we energize this great country. So with that, I want to yield to my friend, Senator Donnelly from Indiana.
Thank you, Mr. President. And to my colleague from Ohio, my colleague from West Virginia, this is a critical issue, and I rise today to join you in support of the Bipartisan Miners Protection Act. We're here to make sure that the federal government makes good on our promise of benefits for miners who risk their lives to help our country meet our energy needs. As you've noted, President Truman and the federal government made a promise with the 1946 Krug-Lewis Agreement to guarantee health and pension benefits for coal miners. These workers and the generations that followed sacrificed their own long-term health. Now they're depending on us to make sure that they get the benefits that they earned. In Indiana, my friend from West Virginia said 27,000 in your state. We have 3,000 retired miners approximately receiving pension benefits and another 1,500 receiving health benefits, many of them in the southern part of my state. There are tens of thousands of other retirees, 90,500 plus, across the nation: West Virginia, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Kentucky. These retired miners and their families face a financial emergency unless we act now. Congress must work to address broader problems in the multi-employer pension system, which is on the verge of crisis as well. Many plans, such as the Central States Pension Plan, includes hundreds of thousands of retired Teamsters and is dangerously underfunded right now. We owe it to these hardworking Americans who did their job. It's time for us to do our job and to solve this problem. This bipartisan proposal, this isn't about Republicans, this isn't about Democrats, it's about Americans coming together to help the 90,000 plus miners and their beneficiaries who face an imminent loss of the benefits they have earned. They have earned these benefits. This is nothing being given to them. They've earned this every day walking into those mines, working nonstop, facing incredible dangers, empowering our country. We can start meeting our responsibility by scheduling a vote and passing this common sense legislation. We made a promise to these coal miners, and we take this promise seriously. They did their part for decade after decade. We can't turn our backs on them. That's not the American way. It's not the Indiana way. It's not the Ohio way. It's not the West Virginia way. I urge the Senate to take up this Bipartisan Miners Protection Act as soon as possible, because tens of thousands of retirees, our friends, our neighbors, our fellow Americans are counting on us to do our job and keep the word that's been given to them. Mr. President, I yield back.
Mr. President,
Senator West Virginia.
yes, let me just say I want to thank my colleague from Indiana and yourself and my colleague from West Virginia, all of us. This is truly a bipartisan bill. As we stand before you, my colleague and I both were born and raised in West Virginia. We come from different political parties, but we've been friends all of our lives. The most important thing is, before we become a Democrat or Republican, we've been West Virginians and Americans first. Sometimes we lose sight of that in this great body that we represent, all the people of this great country. This is a time when we have to come together and do the right thing. These are people that we've asked to do the heavy lifting all of their lives. And all we're asking for is a vote on a common sense piece of legislation that gives them and protects them and gives them the promises that were made. They work for this. They've paid into this. Their pension funds were solid. No act of their own caused this. And we're not asking for a bailout. We think there's a pay for it, a very easy pay for, and it should be done. So with that, I want to recognize my colleague from West Virginia for her involvement, her leadership, her commitment and dedication to fight for this. I thank her so much. And with that, I yield to Senator Capito from our great state of West Virginia.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank Senator Manchin certainly for putting this colloquy together. I want to thank my Senator Portman from Ohio, Senator Donnelly from Indiana, Senator Brown from Ohio. We are deeply affected by this, and the facts bear out that we can't wait. You know, we talk about emergencies, and what we have on the floor is the emerging bankruptcy of Puerto Rico. And I think all of us have expressed deep empathy and sympathy for Puerto Rico and the situation that they're in. And we appreciate the bipartisan effort to find a solution. But at the same time, we need our voices to be heard louder and clearer. And my voice is that I cannot vote for cloture on Puerto Rico when we have stranded and are stranding our hardworking coal miners and the retirees that are upcoming. You know, you got to look at what's at stake here. We've heard the numbers. 21,000 Americans stand to lose their health care at the end of the year. By July 15th, some are going to lose their health care in 90 days. So that's way before the end of the year. You know, you often hear the trite kind of slogan of promises made, promises kept. This is a promise that was made. This is the hard work of American coal miners who knew going in, when they started to work in the mines, the difficult jobs, the dangerous jobs, the questions of the spouse, will my husband make it back today from the mines? They had a promise. They had a promise, and that's why a lot of them pursued and went forth into dangerous positions to provide for their families and to power the country. My colleague from Ohio remarked that Ohio's energy, 70% is produced with coal. Our state of West Virginia, 95. And why? Well, because we're blessed. We got a lot of coal in West Virginia. And that's been a good thing for us for a long time. Unfortunately, we've had a lot of issues in the coal industry that's under assault from multiple directions. Whether it's regulation, increased competition, effects of a broader economy, all kinds of things are playing into this. But the reality is of where we are today. And, we mentioned the numbers of 12,000 Americans that could lose their health care. 5,000 of those are our fellow West Virginians. And I guarantee you, between the two of us, we know quite a few. We live in a small state. We live in communities where everybody knows everybody. And I tell you one thing, to divert from this to what's happened to our state with the flood, I am sure other states do this just as well, but I don't think there's a state that does better than West Virginians helping West Virginians. And what we've seen over the last 3 or 4 days with neighbors helping neighbors and people pulling up each other and pulling together is phenomenal. And a lot of those folks are either, if they're not coal mining families, they know coal mining families, they go to church with their families, their kids go to school together, their grandchildren play together. We're all connected in this. So you look at the health care, you look at the pensions of 27,000 West Virginians. As was mentioned, these are not large amounts. I think the senator from Ohio mentioned $560 a month. Unfortunately, for some retirees, that's the difference between paying your electric bill and having food on the table. That's a substantial, getting gas for the car, buying your medicines, or helping your children when they might need help to purchase a new pair of shoes. All these kinds of things are extremely important in the everyday life of our retirees. So I think the best voices are the voices of the miners. Well, I've received letters. I'm sure you all have received letters and phone calls and talked to folks yourself. From people like Rita in Yeager, West Virginia, who wrote that her husband started as a coal miner 40 years ago, right out of high school. She says without the Miners Protection Act, they will lose their entire health care coverage. Or Walter, who's a third-generation coal miner. We find this a lot. A lot of these are third and fourth-generation coal miners. He's from Danville, and he began working in the mines while he was still in high school. He wrote to express concern not just for himself, but as a typical West Virginian and a hardworking American, he's worried about his friends and former colleagues in Boone County. Teresa, also from Boone County, whose husband worked as a coal miner for 36 years and planned for retirement, and that on the retirement benefit that they receive, the health and the pension benefits. She says, quote, "Please help these retirees to ensure that people like my husband keep the benefits he was promised and that he earned and worked hard for." And then there's Ralph from Morgantown, who reminds us, and I think this is especially important for us to reemphasize today, Congress has the power to keep that promise because it's the right thing to do to protect those hardworking Americans. And Ralph is right. And so I'm going to make a stand with my colleagues. I'm asking in a loud and joint voice to have this vote, to have the vote to keep the promise that was made, so we can have our promises that are made are the promises that we keep. And so while Puerto Rico, I know, is facing a financial crisis, and I have great empathy for what's going on there, I cannot vote for cloture on the Puerto Rico bill until I get some certainty that we're going to move in a positive direction. So I appreciate the passion and the willingness for you, Senator Manchin, to join us together in this colloquy today. We've got bipartisanship. We've got a regional coalition here that I think we can build on every day. And I hope that we'll be successful so that we can make sure that our miners, their families, have the assurances, the security, and the faith in us who could make that decision, and the faith in this country who has made that promise. So I yield back to the Senator.
Mr. President, some people say this is a union versus a non-union issue. That is not the case at all. 1946, anybody that was mining coal was a member of the United Mine Workers of America, almost 99.9%. With that type of participation, having all these people involved in that, that's the deal that was made. That's the deal that Harry Truman, the President of our United States of America, made with John L. Lewis. You've got to continue to mine the coal that keeps the country running. Now today, coal's been villainized to the point where people don't think they need it, they don't like it, don't want it, and it's no good for them. Well, guess what? The coal that we've used today is cleaner and used cleaner than ever before. We keep talking about global climate. I'm not a denier. I think that 7 billion people, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to clean up the environment. We've done it, and we can do a lot more in America. We can lead the rest of the world, who burns over 7 billion tons of coal, to do it much cleaner. If we're serious about it and not just continue to demonize it here in America and the use in America and putting all these people out of work. Now, my colleague talked about Puerto Rico and their finances. We have sympathy and compassion for anybody who's had difficult times. But you've got people that basically give their sweat and their blood and their lives for the energy and for this country, and we're letting their widows and people that are depending upon that retirement, they're depending upon their health care benefits. Let me tell you the domino effect that will happen. The domino effect is this. These health care benefits go by the wayside. A lot of the clinics that take care of people throughout West Virginia, throughout the coal industry, throughout the coal counties all across America are going to be hurting. They're going to be hurting, be able to keep their doors open, to take care of the children and the families and the widows and the people that are depending upon it. This has a ripple effect that people don't really consider. All we're asking is the majority leader. Our majority leader, respectfully, I'm asking him, coming from the state of Kentucky, he understands the mining, he understands the people of the mining, and I'm just asking in a compassionate way if he would consider giving us the vote before we leave out of here. That's why we're not voting on the Puerto Rico cloture. We have basically next week, and after next week, we're gone for quite a while. These widows will, and all the retirees will start receiving their notices July 15th. We're out of here on the 16th. What do we tell them? Well, I'm sorry, we're on vacation. We all gone home. We gave up. The house is gone now. They got in so much conflict, they couldn't take it anymore. They left early. They're not coming back. This is a shame. It is absolutely a shame. I'm almost ashamed to tell people, say, where do you work? I said, I work for the government in Washington. I'm almost afraid to tell them what body I'm in, that we can't do better than what we're doing. I'm getting so sick and tired of, if you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I'm supposed to be against you. I'm not against you. I'm with you. I'm with this country. I want America to do well. I want the whole world to be envious of us so we can help other people. But if we can't take care of ourselves, if we can't help the people that we've committed and made a promise to, then why should anyone? Why should anyone look to America? We are the hope of the world. Well, if you're going to be the hope of the world, you better take care of the people that gave you the country you have. That is the mine workers of this great country, United Mine Workers of America. Toughest people I've ever been around, the most generous people I've ever been around, and the most compassionate people I've ever been around. It is our responsibility, Mr. President and my colleagues, to keep our promise to the miners who have answered the call whenever the country needed them. When our country went to war, the miners were powered, stayed there, and powered us to prosperity. When our economy was stagnant, these miners fueled its growth and expansion. They kept their promise to us, and now it's time for us to do the same. We must keep our promise of a lifetime pension and health benefits to our miners, something they've paid for, something they worked for their dedication to our country. That is why, Mr. President, I'm calling for the immediate passage of the Miners Protection Act. I appreciate my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. This is truly a bipartisan effort. I thank you. Thank each and every one of you. And please talk to the colleagues, and as we do to all of our friends on both sides, to do the right thing and pass the Miners Protection Act. Thank you, Mr. President, and I notice the absence of a quorum. Yield the floor.